So this week we're on week number 8, and this should be published for you now. We're still in chapter 5 this week, but we're going to pick up where we left off last week, which should be at the top of page 102, where draft a plan from a paper sketch begins, and then you'll end at the top of page 121, where model a building from an AutoCAD plan begins. So, you might have guessed then that the assignment this week, we are drafting a plan from a paper sketch. And so your exercise 8 should be up for you. And let's go ahead and get started with that. So the very first thing, you're going to want to either download or just pull up the sketch that I have. You can hit the download button here, or if you just click on it, it will open it. And there's just this little sketch here with a dorm room. And this is the plan that we're going to be drafting today. And I also just pointed out where I'm going to be starting the origin point, just so that if you'd like to follow along with where I'm starting, that might make it a little bit easier for you. So I'm going to jump over to SketchUp here. Oops, ignore all that. And okay, so at the very beginning, we're going to set our model workspace to a plan view just to kind of help us out be able to draft a little bit easier. Sometimes if you're kind of in a perspective view, it might be a little bit more difficult to draft, so we're going to go ahead and set to a plan view. So to do that, you'll go up to the camera tab in your menu bar, and we're going to do two things here in the camera tab. The first one, where it says standard views, just hover over that and go ahead and hit top, and that'll take you to a view where you are looking top down. And then the next thing that we want to do back up in the camera tab, perspective is usually the default, so it's giving you a perspective view of the model. We're going to change that to parallel projection, and what that does is make everything look much more two-dimensional. You won't really see depth to anything. It'll come across as more of a two-dimensional drawing rather than a 3D model. So then, step number 1, we're going to place guidelines at the sketch's dimensions. We'll start at the origin point. And again, I pointed out where I'm going to place my origin point. And then you'll use the tape measure tool to create guidelines according to the dimensions indicated on the sketch. Let's go ahead and take a look at that sketch again. So we're just going to be placing guidelines where each of the walls are at. So we're using these dimensions that are here on the plan to give us guidelines to then be able to sketch from. So I'm going to start at the origin point, and we'll create our guidelines with the tape measure tool. You can hit T on your keyboard to bring up that tape measure tool. I'll go ahead and start with the dimensions that are running left to right. So to start with the origin point, you can click on the green axis to start that guideline, just like how we can click on a line to bring a guideline off of it. You can also use the axis kind of as that starting line. So if you click on your green axis, start to pull over. This first one, according to the sketch, is 2 feet, so I'm typing 2 foot, enter. So I just created this one here, and so then I'm going to go 12 feet in the other direction. So again, starting at my green axis, clicking once, bringing my cursor over to the right, and type 12 foot, enter. Yeah? Okay, and then the next one, so we've gotten our left to right now. We go ahead and do front to back. So we'll have 10 feet total. It's going to be split up between 3'4" in 3 equal parts. So I'm going to start on the red axis here and pull up 3 foot 4, enter. Another one like that, so I can start at that grid line that I just created and type another 3 foot 4, enter. And then one more, clicking on that line I just created, 3 foot 4. So that's giving me the basic guidelines that I can now start to easily draft from. Step 2, we're going to trace the floor plan over the grid lines that we just created. So we'll draw the interior face of the walls to create the room. And let me edit that real quick because I just noticed something wrong. Okay, so we're tracing the interior face of the walls here, and those should line up with the grid lines we just created. So I'm going to start with my pencil tool. You can click L on your keyboard for that. I'm going to start at our origin point, and then just start to draw where those interior face of the walls are. So you should be able to just go along with the grid lines that you've created, making sure that at each end point you're hitting an intersection. That inference engine should be telling you when you're hitting an intersection or hitting an axis. When you get to this point, you might find that it's not quite snapping for you, but we can use what we learned last week, where we line ourselves up with a point that we've already created. Don't click on it, just hover over it, and then slowly start to bring your cursor across so that it stays in line with that point until you reach that intersection, and then you can close. And a face should appear if you have created a closed loop. So that just got us to the interior face of these walls here. And then now we're going to offset those lines 6 inches outward to create the wall thickness. So I'm going to use my offset tool, hover over the space we just created, click once and start to bring my cursor outward and type 6, enter to give us that 6-inch wall thickness. And now you should have 2 faces created, one for the floor and one for those wall thicknesses. Yeah. Yeah. Repeating the offset?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay. So I grab the offset tool. You just hover over this face here so that it tells you which lines you're going to be offsetting. Click once to start that offset, and then move your cursor outward and type 6, enter for that 6-inch offset. For step number 3, we're going to return the plan to a perspective view. So you could just use your orbit tool and orbit around, and go up to camera and put yourself back into perspective mode. Or you can additionally, in those standard views, there's one called ISO, and that'll get you back to more of a 3D view as well. All right, and then we'll delete all those guidelines. You can erase them individually, or if you want to erase them all at once, we go up to Edit and Delete Guides. And then we'll use the Push-Pull tool to extrude the walls up 9 feet. So grab your Push-Pull tool or hit P on your keyboard. Grab the surface for those wall thicknesses. and 9 feet, enter. Okay, and then step number 4, we're going to create guidelines to let us know where the door and the window is going to be. So we have our door here leading into the room, and then we also have a window over here in this kind of alcove area that was created. So I'm going to hover around to that front face of my model. And then we'll create a guideline for the start of the door, which is going to be 3 inches from the origin point. So actually I'm going to pivot around to look on the inside because my origin point is right here at the interior face of my walls. So I'll grab my tape measure tool. And then from this corner, it will be on the blue axis line there. We'll click once there and start to bring your guideline over 3 inches. And then at this intersection here of the grid line that we just created and your floor, we'll hit the rectangle tool, type R on your keyboard, and we'll create a rectangle that's 2 foot 8 inches wide by 7 feet tall. So I'm starting at that intersection there, starting to pull upward, and we'll type 2 foot 8, comma, 7 foot, enter. And that should give you that rectangle for the size of your door. And then we'll use the push-pull tool, again hitting P on the keyboard, to go ahead and extrude that face through so that we create that opening. And you'll see that it'll offset to that automatic 6 inches. And when you click on that, you should be creating that pass-through there. We'll do the same thing for the window. So the window is going to be here inside this alcove. We're going to create guidelines that are 2 inches from the adjacent wall. It doesn't matter which side you start on because we're going to end up with 2 inches on each side of the window. I'm just going to go ahead and start on this left side, grabbing my tape measure tool by hitting T on my keyboard, grabbing this corner, and start to move your cursor over and type 2, enter for that 2 inches. And then I'm also going to create a guideline that's 4 foot up from the floor so that that's where I start the sill of the window. So I'll click once on this edge of the floor and start to pull upward and type 4 foot, enter. And then at this intersection that I just created, switch over to the rectangle tool by hitting R on my keyboard. Then click on that intersection of the guidelines that we just created. And we're going to create a rectangle that's 3 foot wide by 3 foot tall. So I'm typing 3 foot, comma, 3 foot, enter. And that should give you your rectangle for your window opening. And then I'll grab that push-pull tool again. Grab that window face, start to push it outward until we hit that 6 inches, where we can push through to create the opening. And then go ahead and delete your guidelines again. Going up to edit and delete guides. Everybody with me so far? Okay, let's go ahead and keep going. So to continue with the rest of the exercise here, we need to introduce the 3D warehouse. So we have made components at this point. We understand how to model and create our own components. But the 3D warehouse is a platform of components that are created by anyone, and you can download them and use them in your model. So we don't have to always be creating our own components for every piece that's going into our model. We can just go to the 3D warehouse and find some things that other people have created. Components in the 3D warehouse are, so let me actually go ahead and pull up the 3D warehouse. You'll access it both through SketchUp and also just on the internet. On the internet, if you go up to, or you just go to sketchup.com, and you go to products, this drop down, there's one under top products called 3D warehouse. And this is what we're looking at here. So the 3D warehouse has a bunch of different components in it that are uploaded by the SketchUp team, companies that manufacture and sell different products, and even individual users just like us. We can even upload our own creations to the 3D warehouse as well. Anyone with a Google account can contribute to it. In the 3D warehouse, you'll find replicas of entire buildings, brand name furniture, fixtures, equipment, pretty much anything that you'd really be looking for to put into your model. And aside from any branding or logos, anything is free. It's all free, reusable, editable, republishable. So, this isn't going to cost you to bring in any of these elements. And when you bring in a model from the 3D warehouse, you're also bringing in all of its data, all of its layers. So if it has any textures that are applied to it, those are going to come in. If it has any layers or tags associated with it, those are also going to come into your model. So just be aware that whatever you're downloading into your model, it's going to come with all of its data. Okay, so we see here we can get to it from SketchUp's website, but you will need a Trimble account to be able to access and download all of these things. So that brings us to the next step here, where you need to create a Trimble ID. That's what they call their login, is a Trimble ID. So you'll go to SketchUp, and then you'll click on the Sign In button. Let me log out. Up here in the top right corner, there's a Sign In button. And then you'll just hit Create a Trimble ID for being a new user. And then go ahead and follow the steps there to create that ID for yourself. When you have that ID created, we'll also look at how we access the 3D warehouse through the SketchUp program. So there are two ways that we'll find it here in SketchUp. The first one is in your default tray. There should be a panel here called Components. And within here, there is going to be just this search bar. And searching things should bring up any products that are in the 3D warehouse. So I know that we're going to be looking for a door, so if I just search for door in here, it'll bring up all of the products that are in the 3D warehouse that have door associated with them. So you'll see that there are just tons and tons of products in here. However, it's a little bit difficult to kind of see what's going on in these. I can barely see these and I'm really close to my computer. So another way that we can access through SketchUp is by going up to Window and 3D Warehouse. And it's going to make me sign in. And then this box will show up that essentially looks just like the internet page where we can search for our content here. So if I type in door again, it will just bring up tons and tons of different doors that people have uploaded to the 3D warehouse. And when you find one that you want, let's say I like this gray door, you can either directly download it into your model with this download button here, or if you want to take a further look at it, you can click on its thumbnail. You can see all of its information down here, and you can also view it in 3D. So you can actually look at the model in this little viewer here. You can orbit around, you can zoom in and take a better look at things. And then if you decide that that's the one you want, you'll just hit download and it'll ask you if you want to load this directly into your SketchUp model, and you'll say yes. And then you'll have that door in your model. If you were accessing from the internet, if you hit that download button, it'll just download a SketchUp file to your computer. So it should then be in your File Explorer, and there in my downloads is that door. And you will just be able to then drag and drop into your model. Either way works. The method I prefer is by going to Window and then 3D Warehouse, just because everything is much more accessible in my opinion that way, but whatever way that you prefer. They're all the same content, all the same platform. Okay, so then we can move on to step 6, which was importing a door. So we just imported our door here. And what you'll notice, still in your components browser over here, if you click on this little home button that says in model, it'll now tell you what components you have brought into your model. This includes any that you have created yourself or any components that you just downloaded from the 3D warehouse. So you can see that in my components I have Heather, which is the scale figure that came in, and I have the door that I just downloaded from the 3D warehouse. And so now that I have my door, I'm going to move it into place where I created my door opening. I'll just go ahead and grab it by a corner and stick it here where I like it. And your door might be larger than that 2'8" opening that we created. And so you'll just use your scale tool here. So you click S on your keyboard when you have the door selected. You will be able to either use the scale tool here, or I believe what we should be able to do is double click into the door. And I believe we used last week how the tape measure can resize models. So if I were outside of my component and I tried to resize, it would resize the entire model. But if I have a group or a component, I should be able to double click into that component to come into its editing box, and now it's kind of acting as a separate model, so I should be able to resize just from here. So if I grab the tape measure tool and I click on the two edges of a dimension that I know, so I know that this is 2'8". So if I click on those and then immediately type 2'8", enter, it'll ask me if I want to resize the active group or component. I'll say yes, and that would have automatically resized that 2'8". The only thing there is that it resized in all directions, you know, it was proportionate. So it didn't just resize in the one direction, it resized the entire door. So even my door got a little bit shorter then. So you might have to take a minute to just kind of play with getting your door to be where you want. With the scale tool, if we clicked on kind of those outer ones, then it'll scale proportionately, you know, those corner grips. But I can choose these other grips to scale just in one direction. So if I'm clicking that top middle one, then it's just resizing my door up and down in the blue axis. And then I can line that edge up with the edge of the door opening that I created. So that should get my door to be the correct proportions now. So it could be a mix of using the tape measure tool to resize your model and the scale tool, or maybe you just use the scale tool to get that door to the correct proportions that you need. And then we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing, making a window. Or I'm sorry, importing a window. So we're going to go back to the 3D warehouse, up in Window, 3D warehouse. And then I'll go back to the home page and search for a window. And you can grab whichever window you'd like. I'm just going to grab this normal one here. If you want to go ahead and take a look at its details, view it in 3D, you can. I'm just going to go ahead and download right here. And yes, I do want to directly load it into my SketchUp model. There's a very large window. Place it, and then I need it to rotate the other way. So I'm hitting R on my, or I'm sorry, not R. This one is Q. We don't know why it's Q. And I'm going to use my rotate tool here to rotate that 90 degrees to be the way that I like. And then I'll just move that into place in my window opening. And then it's way too large, so I'm going to grab the scale tool and just use the different grips and snap to the extents of that opening that we created. And window frames are usually popped out just a little bit from the wall, so I'm just going to bring that out a little bit. And then now that you have these components in here, you can do whatever you want with them. They are completely yours now. Editing the component in your model is not going to change what's in the 3D warehouse. Those products and models will all stay the same. These are now free for your use. So if you wanted to come in here and change some materials, you would be able to do that. We learned with our bookcase, we hit B, that brings up the materials. And maybe I want this to be more of a wood look door. You can go ahead and paint it however you'd like. Might have to, looks like I've got a lot of nested groups in my component, so I had to click a little bit, keep on double clicking in there to get to what I want. This isn't any certain step in your assignment, just kind of showing you that you can now come in here and make any modifications to the components that you download. I could even, if I wanted to create a window in here, I can do that at this point. This is just completely your own component to do whatever you'd like at this point. Alright, I'm not going to finish that. You don't need to watch me make a window. Alright, and then you're going to continue to pull in more pieces of furniture. We're on step number, oops, that should be 8, 9, so we're going to go with it. You're going to import and place furniture into your model. Your dorm room should include a bed, a nightstand, and a desk. So if we looked at this sketch, that's just what I'm calling some of these blocks. We want a bed, a nightstand, and a desk. You can choose whatever models you like from the 3D warehouse. Just go ahead and practice pulling in more components. And then this last rectangle that's here, we are going to pull in the bookcase that we created a few assignments ago. So one part of your textbook reading talks about being able to place SketchUp models, your own SketchUp models, into your current model. So we're just going to go ahead and grab our bookcase. So what I first need to do is go find my bookcase. Let's see here, I think that was week 5. So what you'll do, you need to open up your bookcase model, but be careful because if you just automatically go up to File and Open, that is going to open up that file and it'll close your current file. So you can't have 2 models open within the same SketchUp window. So to work around that, just go ahead and open up another window of SketchUp down here in your taskbar. Just right click and open up another SketchUp window. And then when that one opens, you can go ahead and find your exercise 5, your bookcase model. Okay, so now I've got on the left our dorm room model, and on the right I've got the bookcase model. We're going to copy the bookcase model into our dorm room model. So I'm just going to grab everything for the bookcase. You can just hit Control-C on your keyboard for copy, and then click over into your dorm room model and Control-V to paste. And that will paste your bookcase model in exactly as it was in this first model. So if this was not, I don't have this entire bookcase in one component, so it pasted in exactly that same way, still in all of its individual parts and pieces. So just be aware that it'll be exactly as you have it in your original model. And then it might make things easier for you if you do go ahead and group or make a component of your entire bookcase, just so that you don't accidentally move just a door or something else. You want to always be grabbing the entire thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab all of the items of that bookcase, right click, make component, give it a name, make sure replace selection with component is indeed checked, and hit create. And you'll see that that popped up over here in my components browser, the bookcase component that I just created. And then you'll just go ahead and place it in your dorm room. If you want to preserve the location between your copy and paste, let's say that in your bookcase model you had it in a very specific location and you want it to paste in exactly the same location. Right now I have it starting at that origin point. You can paste things to come into your new model in exactly the same place. I'm going to go ahead and copy my bookcase again, so I'm just hitting Control-C for copy. And then if I go over to my dorm room model, if you go up to Edit, there's an option to paste in place. And you'll see that my bookcase came in exactly at that same point. It's aligned. It's a little bit difficult to see, but that front corner is aligned with the origin just as it was in my original bookcase model.
Put the bookcase wherever you want.
Yeah, you can put it wherever. You can also copy entire SketchUp models. I could have copied everything that's in one model and pasted it over into the other. Or you can also import the entire model rather than copy paste. You would do it the exact same way that we did with the raster image. We're going up to File and Import, and from there I could go ahead and bring in my entire exercise 5 model, and you'll see that it just gives me everything that was in that model. So that's an option if you were wanting to bring everything from a different SketchUp model. Just be aware that importing large amounts of data will slow down your file. So if you don't need everything that was inside of that model, just go ahead and copy paste those individual pieces that you did want. I'm going to go ahead and close this one out just so that I can have this one nice and big again. And then over in this components browser, every component that you have brought into your model will stay in this components browser. You'll notice even though I deleted Heather, the scale figure, she's still in my components browser. It still stays in the model even if you have deleted it from your model space. Sometimes, if you've been importing a lot of different components and ended up not using it, that can also slow your file down a bit. So it can be helpful to purge the unused ones, and this will get rid of them entirely from your model so that they're not slowing your model down. The way that you'll do that is in your components browser over here, you'll click on the details menu, which is this little arrow over on the right side of the search bar. If you click on that and you hit purge unused, that will delete all of the components that are not currently inside your model workspace. So you'll see that Heather, the scale figure, went away. I didn't notice if there was anything else that was in here that I wasn't using, but all of those that are not inside of your model will be deleted, so it'll free up a little bit of space for you.
Where was that?
It was over here, this little details icon that's to the right of the search bar inside of this components panel. This little details button, and you'll hit purge unused. So purging removes the unused components from your model. Let's say that you may have found some components that you liked and you brought them into your model, but they just didn't necessarily work for your current project, but you're like, I might want to use that again someday. You can create a collection of your components, And that is going to be part of your step number 11. You create one or more collections of your components. So a collection is just a folder where you are keeping the components that you'd like to come back to later. This folder is kept on your computer actually, so if you can link it to your SketchUp so that you can still find it in the components, but it actually lives on your computer. So we're going to go ahead and walk through the steps for it, but just know if you created a collection today on this school computer, you won't be able to go home and access that collection again because it is on the actual computer rather than tied to like your Trimble account. There are ways that we can create it with your Trimble account, but let's just go ahead and look at on the computer for today. So you'll click on the arrow in the upper right corner of the components browser. So this little arrow that is kind of black and white at the very top of the components browser, if you click on that, it'll bring up kind of a secondary panel down here. Same exact thing, it's just kind of copied twice so that you can be searching in different component folders at once. And then to create a local collection, I'm going to be down here in this bottom one. This is where I'm going to have my collection actually be. You'll click on that details icon again and hit open or create a collection. So if you do that, if you already had a collection created, this is where you could go and find it and open it up in SketchUp, but we need to actually create one first. So you'll just navigate to where you want that collection to be on your computer. I'll just go ahead and put it in documents for right now. And I'll create a new folder. It's just going to be my components for now. And then once you navigate to that folder, you'll select folder. And now this bottom panel has turned into that collection folder. You'll see down at the bottom, it kind of lets you know which folder you're in. So in my bottom panel, I'm in my components folder that I just created. And in this top panel, I'm in the in model. So that's showing me any components that are currently inside of my model. So then if I want to bring components that are in my model and put them into my component collection, you can just simply drag and drop them. So let's say I want to put my door, and I want to put my bookcase into my components. And you'll eventually want to make probably different collections for different categories. Like you might have a collection of tables, a collection of different lighting fixtures. So you can definitely customize it however you want, because if you just had one large folder of components, that might make it difficult for you in the future. So definitely customize it however you'd like. And now these should be syncing with each other. Your folder on your computer, it should now have those components that we just dropped into the My Components, or whatever you ended up calling yours, into your collection folder. So these two will be the same once you start to move components into that collection folder.